Hi, and welcome to Filmmaker's Compass Podcast, a show where we talk about movies and, well, more movies. I'm D-Man, joined by CP. CP, how are you doing today?
Dude, I'm pretty good. I had an awesome weekend. I know you did too, but we'll get into that later in the show.
Pretty good is not getting me amped up for this episode. That sounds like you're fine. I feel like I want you to be excellent or
You want to be super psyched and ready to
inspired.
go.
Yeah, like where's all that energy, that CP magic? We need it. We need to dust this podcast.
Okay, first of all, I don't think CP magic has ever been sprinkled on this show at any point in the history of this show. So you're just setting yourself up for failure, buddy.
Well, anyway, welcome everybody to the Filmmakers Compass Podcast. Hope you are having a much better day than CP is, apparently. But as always, we'll go ahead and kick off this episode by jumping into some of our shout outs. So first up this week, CP, is at Eric Drucker1. It's Drucker. And here I need to emphasize this because he starts his comment with I agree with D-Man. So let's...
bullet through the heart, Drucker.
Let that sit for a second. Thank you, Drucker. I really appreciate that. He said, I agree with D-Man. The author's list of classic comic book movies is trash. The list you and CP came up with is far superior. Also, I agree. I don't know why Netflix wants to go do live stuff. I'd love my Nuggets Avs to stream online somewhere. So thank you, Drucker. He did also say we've had a blackout because the major cable channels haven't made a new agreement with our regional channel, Altitude TV, and it bothers the heck out of me. Cable is being way too greedy, which is why I'm cutting the cord. So CP, I feel vindicated in our conversation last week. Drucker, thank you for that comment. I really appreciate it because yes, I think streaming is a fascinating topic going into the future of how we're all going to consume content. And sports are a big part of that. So I'm really glad that it pisses you off, Drucker, although I'm not glad that you are pissed off. So
thank you for making that, distinction.
Yes, he also does go on to say, CP, this is to you. Also, I'm shocked that there were no James Gunn superhero movies that made CP's list of classics. So
I know, man. I know. What was I thinking?
Drucker, the sarcasm is strong with you, and I love it. Those are just those are some great tweets, and I really appreciate it because he actually labeled them like 1 of 2, 2 of 2, and then he put like a little kind of like PS tweet. I was like, this is fantastic. This is how I love to get comments. So everybody, if you guys want to tweet at me, just follow Drucker's lead here.
Take some notes from Drucker. He is apparently the master.
So next up is a shout out to Kelly Jacqueline, who said, I was all excited that you were going to talk about Love is Blind. Let me know when the rom-com draft happens. That's amazing too. That had me cracking up when I read it because now that I think about the description we posted for last week's episode, we did say we were going to talk about Love is Blind because Netflix was live streaming the finale. And we so did not actually talk about the show at all. I think there was like one name drop in there where I just mentioned that was what the streaming example was. And apparently it made it into our podcast description. So,
well, the problem is this. Jack, in order for us to actually talk about Love is Blind, that means I actually have to watch Love is Blind, which is something I haven't done. And I think there's like 4 or 5 seasons.
You got to start. I mean, Netflix, you can watch it anywhere, anytime you want to, CP.
I might watch James Gunn's Guardians 3 before I go watch Love is Blind.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. Let us know which one you actually end up watching. Because now I'm curious. Next up, Jennifer Cervantes Castro said, I'm so pumped too, in reference to the Flash trailer that dropped last week. And I believe you shared on our story, CP. So While we're talking about the Flash trailer, what were your impressions of the new trailer drop?
On one hand, some of the CG in it looks really bad.
Interesting.
But on the other hand, the more and more I keep hearing about this movie, I keep getting more and more excited. The trailer is interesting to me, but all the controversy surrounding the trailer is very interesting to me because apparently, based on internet rumblings, it looks like we are actually going to get Gal Gadot reappearing as Wonder Woman in the Flash movie.
Okay.
And they said they were going to cut it, but now it sounds like it's back in a Henry Cavill Superman appearance.
All right, so they're doing a Justice League reunion apparently.
So
Everybody but Aquaman, it sounds like.
I mean, I'm always psyched about it. Of course, I'm going to go see it. I'm not sold on the basis of the trailer. I'm sold on the basis of it's a movie about Flashpoint. So there you go.
It looks pretty cool. It reminds me a little bit of like Spider-Man No Way Home, Days of Future Past, this kind of melding of universes.
Still, best moment in the trailer is Michael Keaton, I Am Batman. Best.
I know.
That does it. You're like, yep, I'm sold.
And then they do the original Batman music.
Mm-hmm.
Dun, 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 dun,
Yep.
dun. Classic.
So
love it. I know. Now I want to watch Batman. So maybe I'll do that after we record. And then next up, we have at Empathy for Autism said they'll probably end up hiring a kid to write everything with the AIs that are out there. CP, this is in reference to the writer's strike.
Oh, I was like, I have no idea what this is about.
Yeah, so this person commented because I made some posts last week regarding the upcoming writer's strike, which as of now, we're not going to get into it at all. We're going to see how this plays out first before we comment on it. So we will maybe touch on that in a future podcast, but we're not going to talk about it now. I did, however, make some posts about the looming potential of a strike. And this person just commented that apparently the AIs can go ahead and write all the shows. So I think that's a terrible idea. But what do you think, CP? Are you down to watch some AI,
well,
sitcoms?
The sad thing is, you know, there's some producer somewhere that's like, oh, we don't need it. We got Chat GPT-4.
I know.
Just spool it up and crank it out and give the shaft to the writers. Yeah, we'll see how that goes, buddy.
All right. Well, writers, go get your bag. All right. Hope you guys get what you want. And then finally, my last shout out this week goes to my sister-in-law, Monica, who is celebrating her birthday this week. So just wanted to say happy birthday, Monica, and I hope you have a fantastic B-Day. Now, CP, I'm going to toss it over to you. Any shout outs on this episode?
One shout out to our friend of the show, Chris Baxter. He messaged me saying, hey, I was going to recommend you go check out the movie Air because it was amazing. And then his next chat, or his immediately after that, he followed up with, but I saw you already posted about it. So I'm glad you liked Air because it was amazing. And to which I have to say, it was amazing, Chris. I'm glad you enjoyed it too. And I kind of want to go see it again.
I actually did go see Air.
Yay.
I went with my wife, Steph, and we actually really enjoyed it. Obviously, it's a movie that's interesting because we know the outcome. I mean, we know Michael Jordan signs with Nike, spoiler alert, and they create the Air Jordan line and they all become filthy rich. But I found the movie fascinating because it's really a character study of the people working at Nike, kind of in the trenches, and what it takes in terms of risk to be able to, kind of land the whale. And it was a lot of fun. They were able to take scenes that, again, we know the outcome, and yet create a palpable tension that it was like, are they going to mess this up, or how is this going to play out? And they definitely kept my attention. I also thought the pacing was great. So it worked pretty well.
The pacing was great. The soundtrack was great. I love that soundtrack. I'm going to say
how about
the 99th time.
Ben Affleck as Phil Knight?
Dude, he was hilarious. I was actually kind of surprised that they went as far in that direction as they did. I love that line at the end of the movie, though, where he's like, well, I mean, I might be remembered. I think I've done some pretty big things. I built this company, Nike.
I guess they made a movie Air with him in it. So
right?
he's living on in 2023 as, the guy who signed Michael Jordan in whatever, 84. Yeah. So if anything, that was his thing. That was his moment. So it was pretty funny. And I think they did have one really great line in there, which really encapsulates kind of what marketing is and everything. And it's essentially like they bet, the basketball division on being able to sign Michael Jordan. And one of the characters, Jason Bateman's character, does, kind of drop a line that he's like, man, if this fails, like, I'm really going to essentially let my daughter and my family down. And Matt Damon's character kind of has this realization where he's like, I can't believe we actually like did all this because it's just a shoe, and they have a great line in there where Jason Bateman's like, a shoe is just a shoe until somebody steps into it. And it's just a great message that, hey, yeah, they are commodities. They are shoes, but they're tools and people do great things in them. And that's I don't know, marketing in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's true. Very true.
It's fantastic. So yeah, it was a really good movie. I enjoyed it. And I actually told my boss to see it because I work in marketing. So I was like, you should probably go check this out.
I hope he doesn't go see it and come back and be like, we need to hire that Jason Bateman guy. He knows how to do some marketing.
Yeah, I don't want to put myself out of a job, but there's also Chat GPT looming and a lot of writers that might be available. So I need to shut up and get back to work. So anyway, CP, if that does it for our shout outs this week, while we're talking about movies, you and I both went and saw the same movie this week.
That we did.
And I want to talk about it. So
I'm so excited.
We actually had the chance to go see the 40th anniversary edition of Return of the Jedi on the big screen. Star Wars, back in the theater. What were your thoughts?
Dude, why? My first thought was, why didn't they release all 3 original trilogy movies back in the theater? I would have gone to see them all.
I actually agree with you. Because they didn't release Empire Strikes Back or original Star Wars A New Hope on their 40th anniversaries for a theater run, which I'm assuming is because they would have been competing with Disney live action theater Star Wars that was being released at the time. Mm-hmm. I think they should have done the entire trilogy. I don't understand. I mean, even if it's just the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi, I mean, at this point, it's the original trilogy, right? It's the Star Wars trilogy. So, I mean, they should have just done all of them. And I would have loved to have seen the original Star Wars in the theaters again. I mean, I love that movie so much. It would have been such a blast.
Well, and it's so weird because, I mean, obviously, I believe, if I remember correctly, we both saw, the last time you saw Return of the Jedi in the theaters before this weekend was the last time I saw Return of the Jedi in the theaters, and I think we saw it together.
Yeah, I think it was 1997. Yeah. Special editions.
It was such a treat getting to see it in its full glory on the big screen. You just appreciate it in a new way every time.
Yeah. And I mean, the ambiance was great. I think, kind of I mentioned last week when I went to go see Return of the King in the theaters. One of the neat things about bringing these movies back is that the fandom comes out in droves, and that was there. There were people in costumes, people had lightsabers, people cheered when Star Wars came on the screen. They cheered when the 20th Century Fox fanfare came on, when A Long Time Ago came on, then when it hit, everybody was just so excited and the energy was palpable, and it was fun to be in the theater. And that, I mean, translates to, a really memorable experience for me. Yeah. Because I love that energy. Part of the reason that I love to go to midnight shows is, of course, I want to be one of the first people to see the newest Marvel movies and all that stuff. But also, there's just an energy that it's like, hey, I could watch it on opening night at home, if they were streaming it in conjunction with a theater release, but it's not the same. It's just not.
Yeah, there's not, you're not partaking in it with other people. And it just hits you in a different way. When people laugh at the Han Solo lines, or when people cheer, it just, the movie experience, watching this movie that you've seen a million times on the big screen, it plays differently.
And I really enjoyed it. So my experience was great, but now I have a serious question for you that's not necessarily about the theater per se, although because we saw it on the big screen and we're getting to see how everything looks on today's, crystal clear theaters. Do you think the effects, and do you think Return of the Jedi actually held up? So we're going a little total rewind here, CP.
Yes and no. And my answer will be this. Watching it on the big screen, I was still amazed at how well the Rancor sequence does hold up. All the model work and puppetry there looks incredible, and it does not in any way look like dated 80s effects to me. Now, other parts of it, I thought the space battle looked really good still. I think the things that I had the biggest gripes with was some of the Endor sequences. The speeder bikes look like they're on blue screens. Some of the ATST walkers look like they're, on blue screens. And that looks a little disappointing. I mean, again, it is so weird because so much of the technologies of the prequel trilogy were really perfected in Return of the Jedi, special edition, where we actually are seeing, renderings of Coruscant and Naboo and things like that. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. I don't think that the digital enhancements of Sarlacc add anything. I think it still detracts from the original film, and that's kind of what I think about it. What's your read on it?
I have to agree with you especially about Sarlacc. I think we talked about this when you went out to the desert for the 40th anniversary. There was something so intriguing about the Sarlacc pit just being this kind of hole in the desert.
Yeah.
To me, that just, tapped into my imagination as a kid, right? It was like, you just go and you just like throw things into it. And then when they add the beak coming out and you're looking at it and you're like, oh, so it's actually like a thing in the hole in the desert.
Yeah.
Like it's not the same. You're like, I don't know. It was kind of cool when you just thought of it as like a giant mouth that like everybody just goes and like throws their trash in or they, torture people for 1,000 years of digestion.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have to agree with you a little bit about the effects here, because while it was fantastic to see it on the big screen, I mean, I do think that, especially with Empire or with Return of the Jedi, generally being considered the weakest of the original trilogy, some of that was on display here, where I do think, right, honestly, I think Empire Strikes Back literally looks like a painting. It looks like a masterpiece to me. Honestly, I'm not even sure if there's anything bad about that movie at all. Except maybe the fact that they like retcon the fact that like Luke kissed his sister. But other than that, you go back, you look at original Star Wars, obviously they're pushing boundaries of motion control and all this stuff in the original Star Wars. So I'm sure it does look a little bit dated in certain spots. I think Empire Strikes Back looks perfect. Now, what was interesting is I did feel that Return of the Jedi did not necessarily look perfect. There were parts of it, like you said, that looked like they were, from the 80s. And part of that I do think has to do with, a little behind the scenes drama here. But I mean, I know they switched producers. They ended up moving on from Gary Kurtz, or according to Gary Kurtz, maybe he moved on from Star Wars. I don't know exactly how that drama went down. His explanation had to do with, he wasn't a fan of the script and where the finale was going. Lucas maybe felt that, hey, our Empire Strikes Back had maybe gone over budget. It was longer than he had anticipated. And obviously Lucas is financing this whole thing, so this is his call. But there is kind of this notion a little bit behind the scenes drama that maybe they got a little bit cheaper on Return of the Jedi. They hired some people who could do some things, fast and cheaper,
faster and more intense.
Yeah. Hey, can we just like get it going? And so even though they still had, the wonderful team from ILM and a majority of the cast that had been there for the whole trilogy, there were some things that, did change. And obviously, I think Irvin Kershner, who directed Empire Strikes Back, didn't come back. They got Richard Marquand. And, the thing is, at the end of the day, I still love Return of the Jedi. And it's a solid 7 or 8 out of 10 for me. I mean, I just think Return of the Jedi is still a great movie. It's a great capper to the original trilogy. And more than anything, I think they nailed the story that they needed to, which is Luke's and Darth Vader's story.
Yeah.
And they absolutely crush it. I mean, they nail it.
No, it's very good.
I will say, though, that the character that I think stands out the most, that I realize now as an adult looking at it, that didn't have a whole lot to do, is probably Han Solo in Return of the Jedi. And again, a little bit of behind the scenes stuff. I think initially, and this is kind of why maybe Gary Kurtz left, is I think initially they had intended to kill him off, or at least had discussions about potentially killing off Han Solo to dramatically raise the stakes and make it feel that, hey, we don't know if anybody's going to make it through this.
Which I would have loved. I mean, taking the guy who in the first movie only cares about himself and suddenly he sacrifices himself for his friends. I'm like, what a complete arc for Han Solo.
Oh, yeah. I mean, literally, it would absolutely complete the arc. And I mean, his name's Han Solo. It's built right into his name, So I think that was something. And I remember in pre-production, you and I had been talking about Return of the Jedi, and you brought up a good point about Lando.
I never realized it until, I mean, how many times have I watched Return of the Jedi? a million times, never
Yeah.
dawned on me until watching it this weekend. Lando's story is totally missing the most important part of his arc, which is his attempts to redeem himself with Han Solo. He literally shows up, Han Solo saves him at the Sarlacc pit, and then they're back at the base, and he's like, hey, you old pirate, like, can I borrow your ship? Like, there is nothing in the film where Lando is forced to prove himself, redeem himself with his friend who he totally betrayed at the movie before. And like in a big way, sells out the Alliance, sells out Luke,
Well, and not only is it a betrayal, but we have to remember too that Han goes into carbonite. So his last memory when he wakes from the carbon freeze, or the carbonite hibernation or whatever, he literally the last thing he would remember is being on Cloud City, being betrayed. So it's not like, I think, at least to me, he wasn't like frozen in carbonite with his thoughts.
Yeah, right.
Seemed like his thoughts were frozen too, and that hey, when he was thawed, he was right back where he was. But yeah, they never actually kind of dive into that arc. So I don't know, there were a few things, maybe it's like, hey, I love the movie and it was fantastic to see it on the big screen. But yeah, I could see a couple things where I'm like, man, maybe if they had really went for it, they weren't selling plush Ewoks. That wasn't, part of the goal. Maybe we would have got a more darker, edgier Return of the Jedi. But
yeah, I agree.
The version we got is still pretty great. I mean, like I said, I'd probably go 8 out of 10.
You have a poster on your wall.
Yeah, I mean, it's right here. So yeah, I mean, Star Wars, 10 out of 10. Empire Strikes Back, 10 out of 10. Return of the Jedi, 7 or 8 out of 10. It's solid. I love it. And it was great to see it on the big screen. But CP, that is actually not the only movie you saw. So we're going to get a little, CP's thoughts here, and tell us what else you've been watching, because it's a couple different things.
As y'all know, I'm a big Guy Ritchie fan. Talk about it every time I get a chance to. He has a new movie out. It is called The Covenant, and I was blown away. I liked it so much, I actually went to go see it the next day. And if you get a chance, you should really check it out. It's a great action movie, but it's got tons of suspense and drama. And what I like about it is it's actually a very timely movie. I mean, it deals with something that's like a big geopolitical event from a year ago, and it's a really impactful story about it. So if you get a chance, you should totally check it out.
All right. And then there's one other thing you said you watched. Now, this one I'm going to watch, and I don't necessarily want you to spoil the film, but I do want to get your thoughts, because I want to hear if it is as awesomely bad as I hope it might be.
Oh,
and that
it was amazing.
That is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Once and Always, or Once and Forever, or something. One of those. It's on Netflix. It's streaming now. And I think you described it as kind of an extended episode of Power Rangers.
It's like a 55-minute Power Ranger episode. You should totally watch it. It is in the vein of original Power Rangers campiness, like to the extreme. Everything looks the same. The costumes look the same. They go back to the original juice bar from Angel Grove. If you love Power Rangers, you're probably going to like this one.
Nice. Well, I loved Power Rangers, and I'm definitely going to watch it, but that's one I haven't seen yet, so it is on my list, and I'm kind of excited. Now, I did want to ask you, like you said, as far as the suits, all this stuff, everything kind of looks like the 90s. Is this taking place in the 90s still, or?
No, it takes place present day.
Okay.
And what I love about it is my favorite Power Ranger was always Zach. Okay. And Zach is essentially the main Power Ranger in this.
Nice.
Now, it takes place present day, so it's, as though the Power Rangers had been, now 30 years removed from the events of, when they were teenagers with attitude in 1993. The Power Rangers who aren't in the film, either because they're no longer with us or they weren't able to make it, the characters are still there. They throw in some ADR lines, so we get the sense that they're there. There is a nice tribute to, the fallen Rangers at the end of the film. That's kind of cool. And they
Oh,
bring
cool.
back Kat and Rocky, who, if you are a big Power Ranger fan, will know that Rocky took over for Jason and Kat ended up taking over for Kimberly. So it's kind of still within the Power Rangers canon that you know. And it
Okay.
was a fun film. The problem that I had was this. I'm like, if you're going to go through the efforts of recreating Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, like to the T of the same kind of cheesy fights, cheesy dialogue, totally campy, why did we not get our favorite cringeworthy campy moments from the show, which was when the Megazord came out and it was a dude in like a cardboard boxy suit fighting like a dude in a monster suit.
Goldar.
Instead all the make my monster grow moments were done with CG. And I did not like it because I'm like, that's not what it was. And when Netflix went through such pains to, in so many ways, recreate things as they originally were, I don't know why they just didn't totally lean into it and pay some guy, $250 to show up in a crappy looking Megazord cogume.
$250. They could have hired me. I would have done that. So right? I'm here in LA, You guys could have got me. So anyway, I'll be checking that out for sure. I mean, I was a Power Rangers fan as a kid. I think I was a Power Ranger for Halloween one year. I had the action figures, and who didn't have, one of those the morphin things,
Morphin, yeah.
Yeah. They had those coins and you could like swap them out. So you could be whichever Ranger you wanted. It's pretty dope. They had like a Tyrannosaurus Rex and I don't know. What was it? A
Triceratops? Yes. Mastodon?
All those. Oh,
Pterodactyl.
And then a pterodactyl. Yeah. Oh, you almost beat me. That was lag. I won. So, all right, CP. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts on the movies. Obviously, that's what we talk about here. So, it was pretty cool because when we got to pre-production, we were like, "Oh shoot, CP has seen quite a few things in the last week. So let's get him on air and talk about it." So, next up, though, I wanted to talk about something that hits a little bit closer to home, or closer to our old home. And that is, CP, I wanted to talk a little bit about movies that take place in Indiana.
Ooh.
Now, we don't bring this up a lot here. I think we did if you go all the way back to our early episodes, when we were talking, interviewing some of our friends who are filmmakers and different people in the industry. We did talk a little bit more about growing up in Indiana. But recently, we've been talking about a lot of other things and not necessarily our childhoods while we were growing up over there. But there are a sizable number of films that do take place in Indiana. And, I think we're going to mention some TV shows as well.
Yep.
That have produced some really classic cinema, CP. I mean, there's some great movies taking place over in Indiana. So one of the ones I wanted to start off with is actually, not one of my all-time favorite movies, but it is on my list of my favorite movies. And that's Close Encounters of the Third Kind by Steven Spielberg. And this takes place in Muncie, Indiana, which I believe is where Ball State is. And
we've had some friends living in Muncie, Indiana.
Yeah, shout out to Connor. So hope you enjoyed Muncie and didn't have any close encounters. But yeah, that's actually one of my favorite movies. And it's interesting because what I wanted to talk about with Close Encounters of the Third Kind is, have you seen it recently, CP? Let me ask you that to start.
Last time I watched it was when we did the Total Rewind for it, which was about a year and a half ago.
A year plus ago. Okay. Yeah. What I wanted to ask you is, does what we see in Close Encounters feel like Indiana to you? Because it didn't really for me.
No, not really.
There's a couple shots that I was like, yeah, I could see it, but it also kind of feels like it could be anywhere. And with Close Encounters, I just never got the vibe that I'm like, we are in Indiana. And one of the things I wanted to talk about then is a movie that does feel like home. And that is Rudy.
Well, yeah, Rudy definitely does. Spent a lot of time in our childhood at Notre Dame, and it looks pretty much the way growing up, it looked the way it did in the movie. It's very different.
And I feel like, Rudy captures that kind of working class mentality that was,
South
northern
Bend,
Indiana.
Gary,
Yeah.
Fort Wayne, yeah, all that stuff. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
It really kind of captures that spirit of what Indiana was about. And obviously Notre Dame, you and I are huge fans. I should have worn my Notre Dame sweatshirt. I think I've worn it on this podcast before. But
many times.
yes, with Rudy, one of the things that I love is it's actually a true story. So this isn't, like Stranger Things where they're just setting it in a fictional town in Indiana. Rudy actually, they filmed it on location at Notre Dame. And I think, obviously, if you're a Notre Dame fan and you haven't seen Rudy, then I don't think you're a Notre Dame fan. But if you do see Rudy, yeah, it really does kind of encapsulate everything that I love about that area and everything that I miss from home. Indiana isn't complete without, a little bit of basketball. And another movie that stands out, we have not talked about on this podcast before, is Hoosiers, which takes place at Bloomington. Again, another college university, Indiana University, IU. And Hoosiers, along with Breaking Away about cycling, which we have talked about on this podcast. I think we talked about it like a month ago.
Yeah, I believe Drucker Ivor brought up the fact that none of us mentioned it on our favorite
sports
list of movies. Sports movies. Shout out to Ivor.
In terms of Hoosiers and Breaking Away at Bloomington IU, those to me,
I think you misspoke though.
Okay,
Hoosiers does not take place at IU. It takes place in Hickory, Indiana.
Okay,
and it's about high school basketball, D-Man.
Yeah, but I thought it was. I thought they filmed it at IU.
Oh, yeah. Yes. You are correct about that. I thought you meant it. I was like, no, don't mislead people into thinking it's a movie about IU.
Oh, okay. No, yeah, you're right. So anyway, yes, those movies to me don't really, again, capture what I think of when I think of Indiana.
I mean, I don't know. I really think that Hoosiers captures like central Indiana very well. I mean, granted, it's set in the 50s, but there's parts of Elkhart that we've driven through that look like the town in Hoosiers.
I could see it. It's just not, I don't know. It's not what I grew up with.
Okay, fair enough.
Speaking of then what actually does work for me, I'm going to name two shows that I think are fantastic, and they both remind me of home. And that's Stranger Things and Parks and Recreation. Now, have you seen either of those, CP?
I have seen both of them.
Okay. So Stranger Things, what I'm going to say is that small town that, Hawkins is, and the way that the kids ride their bikes, and there's these neighborhoods and they go trick-or-treating and all this stuff. I'm like, that's exactly how Indiana was for me. It literally captures that exact spirit. There were monsters and all kinds of no, I'm just kidding. But I think they nail it. And then Parks and Recreation to me, like, especially the early seasons, just kind of capture the fact that, like, I think, when I moved to LA, everybody, when I said I was from Indiana, just assumed that, like, I was some, kind of hick who grew up on a farm, and it must have been this tiny town. And it ends up, like I said, we grew up in South Bend. We grew up in Granger, but, a suburb of South Bend. But generally, like, there was actually kind of a, suburban.
You mean like we had cable TV and everything?
Yeah, like, it was pretty cool. And I feel like Parks and Rec really captures that, which is Indiana is like, in the more populated areas, anywhere else, really, you go bowling and you go to the movies, and you don't have to live on a farm. Yeah, I mean, Steak and Shake is amazing if you go to the right Steak and Shakes, because sometimes they're terrible.
Yeah,
but
true.
They have, I don't know if they're franchised or what, but sometimes they just don't meet their own quality standards. So sorry, Steak and Shake. But yeah, I think Parks and Rec really captures the kind of suburban, like, neighborhood vibe of what Indiana was about. And that really resonates with me. And those two are probably, out of everything that we've named, Rudy, Close Encounters, Hoosiers, Breaking Away, all of those, I think Stranger Things and Parks and Rec, that's really what reminds me of Indiana. What about Christmas Story? We talked about this.
We have talked about A Christmas Story on the podcast. And it's really weird because I know it was filmed in Cleveland, but South Bend, when we were kids, again, we did not grow up in the 1940s during the time that they made A Christmas Story, but
Sure.
there are elements of that very much still exist in South Bend today. The style of the houses. I mean,
Yeah.
his school looked like Harris.
Yeah, it did, huh? That's where I went to third grade. You're not even.
Yeah,
You're
right.
not,
Like I'm like that's
you're not wrong.
So a lot of that very much is in line with kind of when I think back to like when we were kids, like Plymouth, Indiana, or South Bend, Mishawaka, like very much that was kind of those parts of town looked like that and felt like that.
Now, while we're talking about films that were shot in Indiana, I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of films that maybe you and I have worked on and shot in Indiana. Because we did mention earlier that when going through our own filmmaker history, I didn't make everything I've ever done here in LA. You know,
I don't know that this is a good. I don't know that we want to open this can of worms, but go for it.
all right. Well, then, if we're opening the can of worms, I want to present to our listeners the fact that you and I shot a Dragon Ball Z live action movie in Granger, Indiana, probably in what, 1990?
I can neither confirm nor deny the existence of said film. But it
You can
may be on a
absolutely-
VHS on my
Yeah,
shelf.
you can
over there.
absolutely confirm it because I know you have video of it somewhere. We should actually like take the video that we have and like use 2023 graphics and just like make it amazing. That would be incredible. But it was actually pretty cool. I mean, when you think about, here we are. I think what grade were we in? Fourth grade, fifth grade?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Busting out
We had no business trying to shoot a feature film in the vacant lot down the street, but we did.
No, and it was awesome. And I don't know. I think I like how imaginative we were with it because I remember thinking like we're filming things and like, we're basically using like rubber balls as energy blasts and like different,
Frisbees.
elements like that. I think we used, to like portray energy effects. We had like water. We like took a hose and we were spraying water and different things. But it's weird because I look back and think to myself, like, how imaginative we were to us, that looked like energy,
Yeah.
We're like, I can see it. I get it.
Yeah.
And even though, we would probably have to rotoscope that now and put in some actual, 3D energy. I think the magic was there, CP. I think we could make a really cool cut of that movie. I guarantee you we could make an amazing trailer. Well, and if we're talking about movies that we've made, or for that matter, that our friends have made, I also just want to give a tip of the cap to Help Wanted by Connor Geary down in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. And just say that I know this is a short film he shot last year for the CFC, which you mentioned in one of your posts on our social media. And this movie is still actually playing in festivals right now. It actually aired at a film festival, a mobile film festival this last weekend, although I don't believe it won any awards at this festival. It is an award-winning film. And if you haven't seen it, it's streaming. You can actually go check it out on
Netflix.
Oh, no, sorry, it's on YouTube. YouTube. It's free. You don't need a Netflix account. We can link you to it. So if you get a chance, it's actually really good. It's kind of a, positive message about fathers and sons and, small town. And I'll tell you this, CP, it does feel like Indiana to me.
Well, considering that we have both been to Lawrenceburg, yeah, it feels like Lawrenceburg.
No, I'm just saying, good job, Connor. You captured the spirit of the Hoosiers.
Oh,
so
yes, I will give you that too. That's valid.
Well done. And then I myself actually shot a film called Synthetic,
which is awesome, by the way.
Yeah, South Bend, Indiana. And this is crazy. It was like my senior thesis when I was a kid.
In high school. Yeah.
Yeah. Essentially, I wrote this story about artificial intelligence, CP. I was way ahead of my time.
D-man.
Yeah, I didn't call it Chat GPT, but I did call it.
But the main character's name was Chad. Oh, I'm sorry.
No. What was his name? Oh, it was Jack Merrifield. Is that? I think it was Jack Merrifield.
He was the detective.
Yeah, he was the detective. I forget.
John was the main guy.
Yeah, and I think
like John Connors. Actually, I think it was one.
Yeah, I think it was a nod to John
Terminator.
Connor. Yeah, Terminator. Well, anyway, yeah, essentially, it's this film noir mystery, murder mystery, really about. Well, I'll leave it at that. No. So essentially, there's someone going around murdering people in a small suburban Indiana town, and a couple of high school kids got to figure out, what is going on here, and it has to do with AI robots and uh, synthetic beings, which was pretty cool. And
Yeah.
I think I don't know if it was this one. I had another movie, I think, with a detective back then, where literally like the only car I had was my mom's white minivan. And so like this detective like rolls up, he's got guns and everything, but he like jumps out of like the driver's seat of a minivan. And, and you're like, well, you got to make do with what you have.
Oh my God, that's hilarious, dude. That
So,
is hilarious. So, I just wanted to tell you while we
yes.
were chatting, I pulled up IMDb and I did a list of movies that take place in Indiana.
Okay.
And it gave me a couple other ones that you didn't mention. So I'm going to just ask you if you've seen them and if you think this captures the spirit of what we grew up with. Okay.
Okay.
So the first one is the Viggo Mortensen film, A History of Violence.
I have seen that. And no,
I do. I don't think it does, but kind of where he lives again felt very like, like I felt like you could drive through that town on your way to Indianapolis.
yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's actually crazy because there's literally like one road that goes north and south in Indiana, and you do go through a bunch of small towns like that.
Yeah, right. Like that kind of feels very
31.
yeah, that sort of feels like something that you'd see there. So the next one is the movie Winning from 1969. I have not seen this.
No, I've never seen that. So
I guess we'll have to look it up.
unfortunately, can't comment on it.
All right. Public Enemies from 2009.
With Johnny Depp?
Yeah.
Again, no, not so much.
I didn't think so either.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's weird because I feel like whenever they want to like set a movie or like a television show in the heart of America, often they just like pick Indiana because
it's like so nowhere that they're like, okay, yeah, that's fine. That's as remote as you're gonna go.
Yeah, like it's not so remote that it's not like Montana or like Wyoming where you're like, no, it's got to look like Yellowstone. You're like, nope, Indiana looks exactly like anywhere.
Yep.
Unless you've lived there, and then
The movie Kinsey from 2004.
Never seen it. No, never seen that.
I did see it, but it's about like a sex researcher at IU, so I didn't get a lot of Indiana vibes. Madison from 2001.
Nope, never seen it.
Okay. How about The Music Man from 1962?
I have seen The Music Man.
I have too.
And yes, I do think that works.
I could get some element of that, right?
Yeah.
There is a movie, Say It Ain't So, from 2001. Never seen it.
Nope, sorry.
The movie Hard Rain from 1998.
Hard Rain? What is that even about?
I don't know. Maybe I think Hard Rain is just called Hail, so I don't know.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know. That's a weird movie title.
And then the last two that it lists are the movie Original Gangster from 1996 and In and Out from 1997, which I've never seen either.
I'm down for In and Out though.
I knew you would be, but I did think movie not on the list. It's from 1956, I believe, and it is the movie Friendly Persuasions, and it is set during the Civil War. And obviously, we weren't alive then, but it very much captures the Hoosier spirit of what people in Indiana are like. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out.
Cool. Well, CP, I just brought that up because I was going back through some of the comments that we had made in regards to, I think, DBZ live action that we talked about and Connor's film Help Wanted. And I was like, man, we've shot movies in Indiana. Who else has? And what were those movies? And I don't know, just thought it was interesting to me.
Well, so, I mean, you do bring up a good point. It is very weird how, like, I think a lot of television episodes take place. Like, I know the show Supernatural, but anytime they needed that nowhere town, it was always in Indiana.
I bet X-Files went there at some point.
Did you ever see the show The Middle, which is about an average suburban family? They just happen to be living in the middle of America,
Oh, you know what? I think I have seen The Middle. Yeah.
Yeah. So things like that. I mean, I think Indiana is kind of like a good everywhere that's a nowhere.
Yeah, it's
location.
like close enough to stuff that you could definitely end up there, but it's not so far away that you're like, hey, there's no way this would ever happen here.
Yeah, true. So it is weird.
Well, for our final topic this week, CP, I do want to throw it over to you regarding a topic that you brought up from an article you found, and wanted to get your thoughts on this because we kind of just got into it for a second, and we're going to bring up the actual topic in a minute. But tell us about the article and then why we're going to talk about this.
Sure. Variety had an awesome article, which we will obviously share as we always do, that kind of what's the science behind naming of movies. And it talked about the desire to make something simplistic and memorable and on the nose, but without being too simplistic and boring, and making it still be alluring and kind of mysterious.
Well, we just, like I said, Hard Rain. I mean, what is that? That's
Right?
that's a tough title. Like, what would you take? I mean, I don't even know. I have no idea what that's in reference to.
It's probably like some like noir, like inspired like crime movie. That's my guess.
Imagine it's like a romantic comedy.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna totally look that up after this. One of the challenges though with naming movies, especially in this day and age when so many movies are really getting most of their audience on streaming, is how do you get a title that tells everybody what this movie's about without requiring them to read a synopsis or watch a trailer, which was not always the case because for decades they had the luxury of posters and trailers that people were seeing when they were going into theaters. And now, you know, you have to very quickly be able to summarize for an audience what a movie's about. One of the great examples they brought up was there was a lot of controversy with the directors and the producers of Everything Everywhere All at Once. And the reason why is, what the hell is it about? Who's going to go see it? So there's also a balancing act between making something that's short, enough syllables that it's easily can be easily remembered by an audience.
It's hilarious that you stumbled right there.
Yeah, right.
Well timed. I hope you did that on purpose.
Oh yeah, that was totally it. So yeah, so thinking about that, what are some of the titles that you think really knock it out of the park for movies? Because I'm curious, because as I said, I was not aware of all the science that studios did and some of the ways that they do it. One of them is they kind of pitch synopsises to test groups. They say, hey, this is the synopsis. Which title do you think works the best? Another way that they come up with movie titles is they pitch titles like you were just doing and saying, hey, this is the title. What do you think this movie's about?
Okay.
So,
well, I do actually have a list of titles that I kind of want to talk about because I think these movies are incredibly well titled.
all right.
So here's my criteria though, CP, is when I was thinking of these names, I didn't want any names that were based on previous material. So any books or video games or comics or anything like that, where people are already bringing the imagery and the stuff to the table, right? I wanted to look at some movies where it's like, hey, here's the movie. What is it about?
Okay.
So, you know, I just made a list. So number 5 on my list, this is a nod to anything that is just a direct title, which I love because it often tells you exactly what you're going to get. And that's titles like Cocaine Bear, Snakes on a Plane, Sharknado.
Yeah, that tells you exactly what you're getting in that movie.
I think all 3 of those tell you exactly what the movie's going to be like. And if you watch the movie, I doubt anybody was like, they should have never named it that.
Yeah, right.
Like, I have respect for that. There's something about just being blunt and being like, here's what it is. Cocaine Bear. You're like, I can only imagine it's about a bear that does cocaine. And you're like, that's exactly what it is. You know?
Yeah.
You're like, okay, cool. That's all right. I'm in for Cocaine Bear. Yeah. And then you go see it and you're like, that's perfect. All right.
You're like, cool, bear and cocaine. That's what I wanted.
Number 4 on my list is Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Now, I know I mentioned this in the previous topic as a movie that doesn't necessarily remind me of Indiana, but I do think this title is absolutely amazing. So I think everybody knows the phrase close encounter. And even at the time when you're thinking about like Area 51 and flying saucers and people's perceptions of aliens, I think even the words close encounters still evoke that kind of alien imagery, right? Close Encounters of the Third Kind, referencing aliens. I think there's a lot of intrigue there, and I think it's going to be a movie about aliens. So, or about, a close encounter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it just conveys like the right mystery, the right vibe that would get me to want to go see that movie.
Okay.
So, number 3 on my list, and you're going to give me crap for this, but I gotta say it because I think this title is absolutely incredible. And that's Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Because first of all, that title sounds amazing. Fast Times is great. You can just refer to something, you can refer to the film as Fast Times and everybody knows.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously it's evoking energy. It's evoking, that kind of high school spirit. And you know exactly what it's going to be about. It's going to be about some crazy stories from high school. So now tell me why you're going to give me crap about it, because I already know you're going to.
Yeah, because it doesn't follow your own rules for great movie titles.
Well, it does follow my rules. Yeah, well, it doesn't fit my criteria for this list, although I do think it's a great movie title. But the reason I included it on the list was because apparently when this movie was written, the book was written first, but the film was optioned before the book was released.
Okay,
so
fair enough. I'll give you that.
I don't
technically you're saying the book was based on the movie, or the book was based on the movie instead of the movie being based on the book.
I mean, it's a technicality. I do think the book came out before the movie release, but I don't think the book was like such a big hit that everybody brought all this baggage to the theater about Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I think people's first introduction to that story is the movie. So I'm going to let that one slide because I think that title's just amazing. Number 2 is just Star Wars.
Because you can't go an episode without talking about Star Wars.
No, but I mean, like, it's just so easy. It's not hard to say. Star Wars, it's going to be about space and battles. And it absolutely delivers on that exact premise. Like, and it sounds exciting. Like, whoa, what's it like? What are they fighting about? Like, what's happening? It just instantly gets you intrigued. It's just a great title.
Fair enough.
And number 1 for me, CP, is going to have to be Back to the Future.
I mean, what better... What movie is a more clear example kind of what you mentioned of kind of telling an audience exactly what you're getting into? This is a movie about time travel.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's right there. Obviously that's the entire crux of the plot of the story, is that Marty McFly has to get back to the future. And the title just evokes mystery. You're like, Back to the Future. Like, where are they? What happened? Why do they have to get back to the future? Immediately, you're already asking the questions that the story is going to prompt you, and you're already getting hooked into it. I think it's a great title.
I think you're right. Yeah, no, it's pretty good. It's pretty.
So,
I'm kind of shocked that there are a couple of movies you didn't mention. Oh, go on.
No, go ahead. I want to hear what movies I missed. I mean, I did only list 5.
Well, no, I mean, I thought you for sure would have put Ghostbusters on your list.
Oh, that's a great one too. That's like Cocaine Bear and Snakes on a Plane. Like,
yeah,
I love the bluntness of that title, because it's just like, hey, exactly, they're gonna go bust some ghosts.
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't know. That's a great one. What else did I forget?
Die Hard.
Die Hard, I considered. I do love it as a title. Obviously, there's a lot of death, but it is a little bit ambiguous to me.
Okay.
I think it works. Obviously, it's a title that stands the test of time. Everybody knows what Die Hard is. But at the same time, I don't know if if I had no preconceived notions, I'd be like, what is that? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, fair enough.
Die Hard.
Okay.
What is that
That's
about?
valid. That's valid.
So I know one. Here's one that I love. Goodfellas. So I know this is actually based on a book called Wise Guys. So again, kind of breaking that criteria, but they did not name it Wise Guys. Because apparently there was like another show or movie or something that was coming out called Wise Guys. So they changed the title to Goodfellas. And in doing so, they basically just captured the exact same energy that comes from Wise Guys while inventing basically a new word and an incredible movie.
Yeah. No, for sure, dude.
So I love that. I love probably, I like Inception. I think it just gets me to ask the question of like, what is Inception, which is the right question to ask.
Well, that's what the movie's about. Yep.
Yeah. Like, so it's like, hey, what do you want people to take with them when they, hear this movie title? Like, what is that? And that's the right question. So if you can do that, I think you're winning. And then I love Terminator. I mean, I don't know if Terminator includes all the sci-fi elements, but it definitely, like, if I heard that, I'd be like, yeah, somebody's going to go on a murdering rampage.
Yeah, you're like, I think I need to sign. I think I need to go buy a ticket for that now.
Yeah, like Terminator. It just, I'm like, yeah, somebody's going to go. It's going to be a bloodbath. I guarantee it. And it was. It's just they all added all this like cool sci-fi time travel, AI stuff, which, I mean, works really well, but I don't know. Is there any, like, what other titles do you think? Is there anything else I'm missing?
I mean,
like, what about like Miss Congeniality?
Well, I just love that movie, but I don't think it's a good title. So these are a couple titles. First of all, I actually like Terminator 2, the title, better, just because what a great sequel. Like, Judgment Day is an awesome sequel to a movie.
I have a question. Now that I think about it, is Terminator 2 called Terminator 2? Or is it called Terminator Judgment Day?
It's Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
So it is 2, though.
Yeah. So that might not, I don't know if that counts. That might not meet your requirements.
No, it does. It's fine.
I like the idea of like your subtitle being Judgment Day, because I'm like, that just sounds like stuff is going to go horribly wrong.
I wonder, if you were to like go poll people though, like, do people remember that about Terminator 2? Because I think everybody just calls it Terminator 2.
I mean, probably. I like the name Judgment Day. Another sequel that I think has a good nickname, because actually Mad Max 2 internationally was released as Mad Max 2. Mm-hmm. But in America, it was only titled The Road Warrior. And I think The Road Warrior sounds awesome. That's like a movie that I have to
agree.
I would go watch that. I actually think the decision to call it The Road Warrior is better than calling it Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, because I'm just like, we don't even need the Mad Max Association. We will go see it. We are sold.
And the movie was better than the original.
Oh, significantly better. Yeah. Couple other ones that I think are good.
Okay.
Both from the 80s. I love Top Gun. I don't know what it's about, but I'm interested. It might be slightly misleading. And I love Lethal Weapon.
Oh yeah, Lethal Weapon's a great title. You know exactly what that's going to be about.
Another one that I think is really good from the 70s, Halloween. I don't know what it's about, but I know that it takes place on Halloween.
Yeah.
And I mean, the producer credits the name with the reason why the film has stood the test of time. Because he's like, there's a reason for people to watch it. But what I think these are what I would consider three of my very favorites.
Okay.
From 1968, 2001, A Space Odyssey.
Okay, that's a great title. Yeah.
Don't know, but like, you're intrigued. This is in sci-fi. Because he chose the word Odyssey, it has like an epic quality to it.
Yep.
That is very much played out in cinema. From 1998, Guy Ritchie's Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Which is way more specific once you see the movie.
Yes, right? You don't really know what it's about, but you do know that it involves a smoking gun in some way, which is in more than one way this plays out in this movie. And I think that's just a brilliant, memorable title. And it's the type of thing that I feel like if I saw that on like a marquee sign, or I saw that on a poster, I would probably be like, you know what? I might go watch that. that movie.
Yeah.
But then again, I mean, listen, this might be a violation of your one of your rules with no names, but I still think that this is probably one of the best movie titles ever. It is so direct. RoboCop. Because it is a movie about a robot and a cop. Like who's one guy. And I'm like, what else are you going to call that other than RoboCop? And I love RoboCop, so
I will say that is actually a really great title. I mean, you know exactly what you're
exactly what you're getting. And when you buy a ticket for RoboCop, I swear nobody walked out of that movie disappointed. They're like, you know what? I want to go see the robotic cop kill people. And that's what they got.
I like The Dark Knight. I guess I like the way the movie does the title. You know, like Batman Begins. I like how Nolan puts the titles at the end. Which is interesting because, right, like literally Batman Begins is an origin story, and when he drops the title card, it's like at the end of the movie, it's like Batman Begins, and you're like, oh, I get it.
Yeah, right.
It kind of works. Yeah. Which, obviously, that might be like the most direct, like Batman name ever, other than Batman.
Yeah,
I mean, Batman Begins, you're like, oh, okay, they're rebooting Batman. Got it.
And Batman Returns, I mean, he does come back for the second Batman movie, so that's...
Yeah. You're like, hey, I mean, those are based on comics, and I said I wasn't going to get into comic book movies, but yeah, those are pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's interesting. I'm curious what our listeners think. You know, what are some of your favorite movie titles?
You know, another good movie title? Sorry, this just popped in my head. And in no way, I don't think it tells you what the movie is, but I think it's memorable. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Interesting. Yeah, it's definitely memorable. Oh, that's another quality, though, that I think, you know, I might need to put some more weight in is there are some movie titles that, sure, maybe they don't bluntly explain what the movie's going to be about or have enough intrigue to get you to ask the right questions, but some movie titles are just memorable. And that's a good one. So if you can deliver on that quality, you might be able to get people at least intrigued because you're like, wow, that's just dope. Sounds cool.
Yeah, right. No, I agree.
But yeah, I'd love to hear what our listeners have to say. I'm interested if you guys like the movies that we picked, but more than that, what movies would you add to a list of the best movie titles of all time? Again, I personally said I'm not going with anything based on previous material, so books, video games, comics, things like that.
Yeah, that cuts out a lot. And then not going with names, I mean, I'm pretty sure like there was a period where like every single Disney animated classic was just named after the main character. But
yeah, you know,
Snow White, Cinderella, like that's they literally made billions of dollars off of naming movies after the star.
Yeah, or something like Rocky or whatever. You know, I just didn't want to get into names because, I mean, sure, I mean you got to pick a cool name, but I don't know. If you're just naming your story after your character, then I'm like, that's pretty easy, I guess.
True.
So I don't know. But all right. Well, to everybody out there, thank you so much for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Be sure to share your thoughts and your comments on this episode, and we'll bring them to the shout outs next week and talk about them. You can follow the podcast at filmmakerscompass.com, where we have a feed with all of our episodes, as well as links to all of our social media, which you can follow at Film Comp Podcast. You can follow me at Big Kid D-Man, and you can follow
me at NDCal5. Thank you for checking out this week's episode of Filmmakers Compass Podcast. In the meantime, keep watching movies, and we will see you back here next week.